I want to tell you about the day everything I thought I knew about my life turned out to be a carefully constructed lie. But here's the twist. That wasn't the day that changed me. The real transformation came later, from the most unexpected source imaginable. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it's what you choose to do with that truth that finally breaks your chains. My name is Patricia Henderson, though everyone calls me Patty. I'm 67 years old now, and I'm sitting on the deck of my little rented cottage by the Pacific Ocean, watching the evening sun paint the sky in shades of pink and gold that I never would have noticed in my old life. There's a glass of red wine beside me, a good Pinot Noir, something I've learned to appreciate in these past few years, and my journal lies open on the weathered wooden table. The silver bracelet on my wrist catches the light. I bought it for myself last month, just because I wanted to. That might not sound revolutionary to you, but for me, it represents something profound. The right to make choices for myself. Citing, for 35 years, I was Mrs. Richard Henderson, wife of a successful commercial real estate broker, mother of 2 beautiful daughters, and the kind of woman who had her life perfectly arranged. I worked as a bank teller for 3 decades. Nothing glamorous, but honest work that I took pride in. Richard and I lived in a comfortable 4-bedroom house in the suburbs that we'd decorated together over the years. Every picture frame, every throw pillow, every carefully chosen paint colour represented what I thought was our shared life, our mutual decisions, our partnership. I should have known something was wrong. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere, like breadcrumbs I chose not to follow. But when you've invested 3.5 decades in believing something, you develop a remarkable capacity for self-deception. It was a Tuesday in March 2018, one of those ordinary afternoons that become dividing lines in your life. I was home alone, folding laundry. Richard's shirts, actually, which now seems almost comically ironic. The doorbell rang at 2:47 p.m. I remember looking at the clock, annoyed at the interruption during my favourite talk show. When I opened the door, I saw a woman I'd never met before. She was maybe 40 years old, with long dark hair that fell past her shoulders, and an expensive-looking tan trench coat that probably cost more than my monthly salary used to be. But what I noticed most were her eyes. Red and swollen, like she'd been crying for hours. There was something desperate in the way she stood there, shoulders hunched, clutching her designer purse like a lifeline. "Mrs. Henderson?" Her voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "Yes." I felt my stomach tighten. You know that instinct, that animal awareness when something is terribly wrong? I had it then. "My name is Lauren Mitchell. I need to talk to you about your husband, Richard." The name hit me like ice water. Lauren Mitchell. I knew that name. 3 years earlier, I'd noticed it on Richard's phone bill, a number that appeared over and over again, sometimes 5 or 6 times a day. When I'd asked about it, Richard had barely looked up from his newspaper. "Client," he'd said dismissively. "Real estate deal. Why are you going through my phone records?" The way he'd turned it around on me made me feel like I was the one being unreasonable, had shut down my questions immediately. I'd chosen to believe him. Or maybe I'd chosen not to dig deeper. Sometimes those 2 things are the same. I stood there in my doorway, staring at this crying stranger who knew my husband's name, and every cell in my body screamed at me to slam the door, to preserve my ignorance just a little longer, to stay in the comfortable lie. Instead, I stepped aside. "Come in." We sat in my living room, The room Richard and I had furnished together over 30 years of marriage. The cream-coloured sofa we'd bought to celebrate his first big commission. The antique coffee table we'd found at an estate sale and refinished together one summer. The family photos on the mantel, our wedding day, the girls as babies, vacation snapshots from Hawaii and the Grand Canyon. Everything in that room was supposed to be evidence of our life together, our love, our commitment. Lauren perched on the edge of the armchair, still clutching her purse. She looked around the room, and I saw tears start to fall again. "I've been having a relationship with Richard for 12 years, she said, her voice breaking. "I know he's married. He told me your marriage was essentially over, that you stayed together for appearances, that he was going to divorce you. I waited. God help me, I waited 12 years. 12 years. The words echoed in my head. 12 years ago, our daughter Emma had just graduated from college. 12 years ago, Richard and I had celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary with a party for 100 people, renewing our vows in our backyard. I'd worn a cream dress and cried happy tears while Richard promised again to love and cherish me for the rest of his life, while apparently sleeping with the woman now sitting in my living room. My hands gripped the armrests of my chair so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to throw her out, to break something. Instead, I heard my voice, oddly calm. "Why are you telling me this now?" Lauren looked at me with something like gratitude for the question. "Last week I told him I'm pregnant." She placed a hand on her still flat stomach. "I'm 42 years old. This might be my last chance to have a child. I thought, God, I was so stupid. I thought this would finally make him leave you, that he'd want to be there for his child." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "Richard said he needed time to think about it. Then 3 days ago, I got this." She showed me the screen. Richard's number at the top, and below it, words so cold they could have been written by a stranger. "This relationship needs to end. I've made my decision. I'm not leaving my wife, and I don't want another child at my age. Please handle the situation and don't contact me again. Handle the situation." Like she was a problem to be solved, not a woman who'd given him 12 years of her life. "I'm not here to break up your marriage, Mrs. Henderson," Lauren said, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I'm here to tell you the truth because you deserve to know who you're spending your life with. I thought I knew him. I thought he loved me. But now I understand. He just wanted both worlds. The stability of you, the excitement of me. He wanted his cake and to eat it too, and we were both just ingredients." She stood up, reaching into her bag and pulling out a manila folder that she placed carefully on the coffee table between us. "This is everything. Hotel receipts going back a decade. Photographs of us together. Email printouts. Text messages I saved. And a letter I wrote to you, explaining it all. How we met. How it started. All the times I believed him when he said he was leaving you soon. I thought he loved me. But what I've realised is that Richard only loves Richard." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara. "Mrs. Henderson, I am so sorry. But I thought you should have the right to choose, instead of being kept in the dark. That's more than he ever gave either of us." Then she left. Just walked out my door and out of my life, leaving that folder on my coffee table like a bomb waiting to explode. I sat there for 2 hours without moving, just staring at that folder. The afternoon light moved across the room, shadows lengthening, and I didn't turn on any lights. I just sat in the growing darkness with the evidence of my husband's betrayal 12 inches away from me. Finally, I opened it, page by page, year by year, the documentation of 12 years of lies. Photos of them at restaurants I recognized, places Richard had told me he was having business dinners, hotel receipts from weekends he'd said he was at real estate conferences, emails where he called her baby and my love, and promised they'd be together soon. Screenshots of text messages planning secret meetings, coordinating alibis, laughing about close calls. There was Lauren's letter too, 5 pages of small, neat handwriting. She explained how they'd met at a real estate industry mixer in 2006, how Richard had pursued her, told her his marriage was loveless, convinced her that I was cold, and they stayed together only for the sake of the girls. How he'd promised her every year that this would be the year he finally left. How she'd turned down other relationships, other opportunities, waiting for him. How she'd slowly realised that the promises would never materialise, but by then she was in too deep, too invested, too hopeful that maybe next year would be different. Reading her words, I felt something I didn't expect. A strange kinship. We'd both been manipulated by the same man. We'd both believed his lies. We'd both wasted years of our lives on someone who saw us as conveniences, not people. When Richard came home at 6:30 p.m., loosening his tie as he walked through the door, I had read everything twice. I knew every restaurant, every lie, every secret weekend. I had memorized the timeline of my own humiliation. "Hi, honey," he said, the same way he'd said it 1,000 times before. "What's for dinner?" I picked up the folder and threw it at his feet. Papers scattered across our hardwood floor, receipts and photos and printed emails, creating a carpet of betrayal. His face went white, completely, utterly white. "Patty, I can explain." "Don't." My voice was surprisingly steady. "Don't say a single word to me right now." The next 3 months were the darkest period of my life. Richard cycled through every stage of a cheater's playbook. First came denial. She's lying, she's crazy, she's obsessed with me. When I showed him his own emails, his own words, he switched to minimization. "It wasn't serious, it meant nothing, you're the one I really love." Then came the breakdown. Richard, my proud, successful husband, on his knees on our bedroom floor, sobbing, begging for forgiveness, swearing Lauren didn't count, that I was his real wife, his true love. The performance was almost impressive. Almost. Our daughters reacted in ways that split my heart in 2 different directions. Emma, 34, and always the fiercer of my girls, was furious on my behalf. She came over the day after I told her, marched right past her father without speaking to him, and said to me, "Leave him, Mum. Divorce him. He doesn't deserve you. He never did." She'd always been protective of me, my Emma, probably because she'd watched me shrink myself for years to accommodate Richard's needs, his schedule, his priorities. Sophie, 30, cried for days. She showed up at our house pleading, "But he's our dad. He made a terrible mistake, but he's still our father. Can't you go to counselling? Can't you try to work it out? Think about the grandkids. They love him." Sophie had always been the peacemaker in our family, the one who smoothed over conflicts and wanted everyone to be happy. Their different reactions made everything harder. I felt like I was betraying one daughter no matter what choice I made. I went to see a lawyer. A woman named Patricia Jameson. Yes, another Patricia, which felt like some kind of cosmic joke. who had kind eyes and a reputation for being ruthless in divorce proceedings. She laid out my options in her downtown office, surrounded by law books and certificates that proved her competence. Meanwhile, Richard hired the most aggressive divorce attorney in the city, a man named Gordon Reeves, who was famous for protecting wealthy husbands' assets. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 35 years of marriage, of building a life together, of supposedly being partners, our final communications were delivered through lawyers in expensive suits who charged $400 an hour to translate our hurt into legal language. But then something strange happened in the middle of all this legal maneuvering and emotional chaos. 6 months after Lauren's first visit, she appeared at my door again. This time her pregnancy was visible, a round belly that she cradled protectively as she stood on my porch. It was a warm September afternoon, and she wore a loose floral dress and flat sandals. "Mrs. Henderson," she said quietly. "Or should I call you Patricia?" I never knew what to call you. "Patty," I heard myself say. "Everyone calls me Patty." "Patty," she repeated, like she was testing out the word. "Can we talk?" "I have a proposition." I should have slammed the door. I should have called my lawyer, my daughters, my therapist. Instead, I invited her in again. Maybe I was still in shock. Maybe I was curious. Maybe on some level I didn't fully understand yet. I recognized that we were connected now, whether we liked it or not. We sat in the same spots as before. The divorce papers were spread across the dining room table in the next room, visible through the doorway. Lauren saw them and nodded, like they confirmed something she already knew. "Richard refuses to acknowledge this baby," she said, her hand on her belly. "His lawyer contacted me with an offer. He'll give me $100,000 if I sign documents releasing him from any future financial obligation and agreeing never to pursue child support or list him on the birth certificate." I knew about the money. It had come from our joint savings account, reducing our retirement fund. Just another way Richard had stolen from our future. "I don't want his money," Lauren continued. "Well, I need it. I got fired from my job when they found out about our relationship. Apparently, having an affair with a married client is unprofessional conduct. I'm 7 months pregnant, unemployed, and alone. So yes, I took the money, but that's not why I'm here." "What do you want?" I asked, genuinely curious now. She looked directly at me, her dark eyes meeting my light blue ones. "I want to know if this baby will have a grandmother." I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "I know it's crazy," she said quickly, words tumbling out. "I know you have every reason to hate me, to want nothing to do with me or this child. But this isn't the baby's fault. This is Richard's child, which means, in a way, it's part of your family. My parents are dead. My sister and I haven't spoken in 5 years over something stupid I can't even remember now. This baby is going to come into the world with almost no family at all. You want me to be a grandmother to my ex-husband's child with his mistress?" I said it out loud just to hear how insane it sounded. "I want you to consider it," Lauren said. "We're both victims of Richard's selfishness. We both wasted years on a man who saw us as accessories to his life, not as real people with our own needs and dreams. But we don't have to continue that pattern of damage. We could choose something different." "I need to think," I said, and Lauren nodded, standing to leave. "I understand. I'll be at this number." She handed me a card with her cell phone written on it. "Whatever you decide, I respect it. But Patty, thank you for listening. That's more than he ever did for either of us. I spent the next month in an agony of indecision. I talked to my therapist, Dr. Sarah Morrison, in session after session, exploring my feelings from every possible angle. Emma thought I'd lost my mind when I even mentioned considering Lauren's request. "She's trying to manipulate you, Mum. She wants free childcare and a connection to Dad's money." Sophie, surprisingly, was more open. "Maybe it could be healing?" "I don't know, Mom. It's unconventional, but your whole situation is unconventional." I thought about what Lauren had said. We could choose something different. For 35 years, I'd let Richard make the choices. Where we lived, how we spent money, how we raised our daughters, even what we ate for dinner most nights. I'd deferred and accommodated and shrunk myself smaller and smaller until I barely recognized my own desires. This was my chance to choose. Not based on what Richard wanted, or what society expected, or what made sense to anyone else. What did I want? Christmas Eve, 2018, I found myself in a hospital waiting room, watching the clock tick past midnight into Christmas Day. Lauren had gone into labour 3 weeks early, and she'd called me, her voice shaking with fear and pain. "I'm alone," she'd whispered. "I'm so alone." So there I was, in a hospital waiting room decorated with silver tinsel and a small Christmas tree, waiting for my ex-husband's mistress to give birth to his child. At 2:17 a.m. on Christmas morning, a nurse came out with a tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. "Miss Mitchell asked if you'd like to meet Lily Rose." When that nurse placed Lily in my arms, something inside me cracked open. She was perfect, impossibly tiny, with Richard's nose. I recognized it immediately. But also her own distinct features. Wispy dark hair like her mother's. Tiny fingers that wrapped around mine with surprising strength. Eyes that seemed to look right through me, seeing something I didn't yet understand about myself. She wasn't Richard. She was just a baby. Innocent, blameless, deserving of love. I held her for 20 minutes while Lauren rested, and in those 20 minutes, something fundamental shifted in me. I'd spent 6 months consumed by betrayal and anger and hurt. All justified, all understandable. But Lily didn't deserve to inherit that pain. She deserved a chance at a life filled with love, regardless of how she came into this world. Now it's been almost 2 years since that Christmas morning, and Lily is part of my life in ways I never could have imagined. Not every day. I'm not her primary caregiver, and I maintain clear boundaries. But regularly. She comes to my cottage by the sea every other weekend. I take her to the beach, where she toddles along the sand collecting shells in her little bucket. I sing her the same songs I sang to Emma and Sophie when they were babies. I buy her books and toys. And yes, I'm building a college fund for her, a small one, but something to give her opportunities. Lauren and I have become something I struggle to define. Not friends exactly. The foundation of our relationship is too complicated for that simple word. But allies, maybe. Survivors of the same disaster, choosing to build something new from the wreckage. We talk honestly now in ways I never talked with Richard. About parenting, about healing, about our fears and hopes. She knows I'm not replacing her mother, and I know she's not trying to replace my role as Richard's wife. We've carved out our own unique relationship, one that doesn't have a name because maybe it's never existed before. Emma eventually came around. It took almost a year, but last month I watched her daughter, my 9-year-old granddaughter Madison, teaching Lily how to build a sandcastle. both of them laughing as waves knocked it down. Emma stood beside me and said quietly, "You were right, Mum. She's just a kid, and you're happier than I've seen you in years." Sophie loved Lily from the start. Her two daughters, 7 and 5, call Lily their cousin. They don't understand the complicated adult history, and honestly, they don't need to. Children are remarkably good at just loving people without requiring extensive explanations. Richard remarried last year. His new wife, Amanda, is 25, 40 years younger than him. His former assistant at the real estate firm. According to Emma, who still has contact with her father despite her anger, they're already fighting. Amanda apparently discovered that Richard had been texting other women within 6 months of their wedding. Patterns, it seems, are hard to break. I feel nothing when I hear news about Richard anymore. Not anger, not satisfaction at his troubles, not even curiosity. He's become irrelevant to my story, just a character from my past who happened to set in motion the events that led me here. This cottage by the ocean that I rented with money from the divorce settlement. It's small, just 2 bedrooms, a living room with big windows overlooking the Pacific, a tiny kitchen where I've learned to cook meals just for myself. I'd never lived alone before. I went from my parents' house to college to marriage. At 65 years old, I experienced living alone for the first time in my life. It was terrifying at first. The silence, the freedom, the responsibility of making every single decision, from what time to wake up to what to eat, to how to spend my evenings. No one to accommodate, no one to defer to, no one to blame if something went wrong. It was also exhilarating. I've discovered I like my coffee strong and my mornings quiet. I prefer reading on the beach at sunset to watching television. I enjoy cooking elaborate meals for one and eating them slowly while watching the waves. I've taken up watercolour painting. Badly, but enthusiastically. I volunteer at the local library twice a week, reading to children, and the sound of their laughter fills something in me that I didn't know was empty. Lauren met someone 8 months ago. His name is Michael. He's a high school teacher, and from what I can see, he's genuinely kind. He met Lily early on and didn't run. Instead, he asked Lauren questions about her daughter, learned her favourite books, showed up to toddler birthday parties. He looks at Lauren the way I used to dream Richard would look at me, like she's the most interesting person in the room, like her words matter, like her happiness is important to him. Watching Lauren fall in love with someone who actually loves her back has been oddly healing for me. It's proof that the damage Richard did doesn't have to be permanent, that it's possible to trust again, to hope again, to let someone in after being betrayed. People ask me all the time why I did it, why I welcomed Lauren's child into my life, why I don't hate Lauren for sleeping with my husband, why I chose this complicated, unconventional path instead of the simpler route of cutting all ties and starting fresh. The answer is both simple and complex. The simple part is that hating Lauren would have required energy I didn't want to spend on Richard's legacy. She was as much his victim as I was, just with different lies. The complex part is that welcoming Lily into my life wasn't really about Lauren or Richard at all. It was about who I wanted to be. For 35 years, I'd been defined by my relationship to Richard. Mrs. Richard Henderson, Richard's wife. The woman Richard married. Even my betrayal was filtered through him. The woman Richard cheated on. But Lily gave me a chance to define myself by my own choices. Not Richard's choices, not society's expectations, not even what made logical sense. My choices. I chose to see an innocent child instead of a symbol of my humiliation. I chose to extend grace when I could have chosen bitterness. I chose to build something new instead of just mourning what was destroyed. Those were my choices, and they made me someone I'm proud to be. Richard took a lot from me. 35 years of my life that I can never get back. My trust in marriage, in partnership, in the promises people make. My confidence in my own judgment. After all, how could I not have known? My sense of security in what I thought was a stable, predictable future. But there's one thing Richard couldn't take from me. One thing Lauren's unexpected visit that March afternoon actually gave back to me. The power to choose who I become. Not who I was in relation to him, but who I am in my own right. Tomorrow, Lauren is bringing Lily for lunch. We'll walk on the beach afterward, and Lily will collect shells in her favourite purple bucket. She'll find interesting rocks and present them to me like treasures. I'll take photos and add them to the album I'm making for her, so that someday when she's old enough to ask questions about her complicated family, she'll have evidence that she was loved from the very beginning. This isn't the life I planned. I had imagined growing old with Richard, retiring together, travelling to places we'd always talked about visiting. I had imagined being a traditional grandmother to Emma and Sophie's children, hosting holiday dinners in the house we'd spent decades in, watching Richard spoil our grandchildren the way grandparents are supposed to do. That life is gone. That version of me is gone. And honestly, I don't miss her as much as I thought I would. That woman was smaller than I am now, quieter, more afraid. She spent so much energy trying to be what someone else needed that she forgot to discover what she needed. This life, the one I have now, is mine. Built from the ashes of betrayal, shaped by choices that made sense to my heart, even when they confused my head. It's filled with imperfect love and complicated relationships and unexpected blessings. It's filled with Lily's laughter and the sound of waves and the freedom to eat ice cream for dinner if I want to. It's filled with my own paintings on my own walls, and books I choose, and silence I enjoy, and a silver bracelet I bought just because I liked it. Sitting here watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colours, I think about all the advice people have given me over these past years. Don't let them win, some people said, as if life were a competition to be won or lost. Make them pay, others advised, as if revenge could heal wounds or restore lost time. But here's what I've learned. The best revenge isn't making someone else suffer. The best revenge is living well. It's loving freely. It's becoming the truest, fullest version of yourself, especially, and perhaps most importantly, after everything falls apart. Richard didn't destroy me, though he tried. He inadvertently set me free. Lauren didn't ruin my life when she showed up at my door that March afternoon. She gave me back the power to choose my own path. And Lily, this perfect little girl, who should have been nothing but a reminder of pain, became instead a teacher. She taught me that love doesn't have to follow conventional paths. That family can be built on choice, not just biology. That the most important question isn't, what happened to me? But, who do I choose to become in response to what happened? I choose to be someone who can look at complexity and find beauty, who can stand in the wreckage and see the possibility of building something new, who can hold a child born from betrayal and see only innocence and potential, who can sit on a deck overlooking the Pacific Ocean at 67 years old and feel for the first time in decades completely and fully alive. That's my story. Not the fairy tale I thought I was living, but the real one, messier, more painful, more complicated, and ultimately more true. It's a story about betrayal, yes, but more importantly, it's a story about choice. The choice to define myself by my actions, not by what was done to me. The choice to love in the face of hurt. The choice to build in the face of destruction. And sitting here now, watching the sun sink into the ocean while I wait for tomorrow's visit from a little girl who calls me Gamma Patty, I can honestly say that I choose this life. Every complicated, imperfect, beautiful piece of it. This is who I am. Patricia Henderson, not defined by my marriage or my divorce, but by my choices. A woman who learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can crack you open just enough to let in the light. A woman who discovered that she's stronger, kinder, and more resilient than she ever knew. A woman who found freedom in the last place she ever thought to look. And that, my dears, is worth more than any perfect marriage ever could have been.